Morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join Visual's webcast on Azure Optimisation. Hopefully, next hour will be useful to you. We're going to spend some time just talking about who Visual are, just for a few minutes. Appreciate some people on the call probably know us quite well already, but maybe something new for others. Then I'll also introduce who the voices are on the phone. And then we'll spend some time talking about our cloud application analysis offer. So myself, Mark Wilson, and my colleague Abby Williams will talk about that. Then we'll hand over to our colleagues in Visual Managed Services who are going to talk about Azure Optimisation. They've got lots of experience of coping with bill shock and also coming up with some ways to optimise the way in which Azure, particularly infrastructure as a service, is used. We've got some time at the end for Q&A, but if you do have any questions as we go through, feel free to ask them in the IM window. We'll try and pick them up if we can along the way, and if not, we've got some time at the end of the session. With no further ado, I shall move on. The voices on the end of the phone, I think we'll probably each say hello in turn so you get an idea of whose voice is whose, but I'm the easy one to tell. I'm Mark Wilson. I'm one of the architects here at Visual, and I typically get involved in early stages of projects and leading the larger programs. But in general, what I do is step away from the solution, look at the business goals and objectives, and then try and map Microsoft technology onto those business drivers. So that's my function within Visual.
I'm Abby Williams. I'm a business analyst in Visual, and I'm working on trying to optimise customers' return on investment on Microsoft tooling, in particular Azure and Office 365.
Hello, I'm Amanda Sharp. I'm Head of Managed Services here at Visual. We manage services for customers.
I'm Helen Stadden. I'm one of the RMS team leaders. I work for Amanda, and my team tend to work around new solutions, and particularly we are involved in the Azure Optimisation section.
Great, thank you. So, as I mentioned, I'm just going to spend a few minutes introducing Visual here for those who perhaps are less familiar with us and have joined the call. So, Visual's a Microsoft services company, and this rather fuzzy picture is it's nearly a year old now. It's taken from last year's worldwide partner conference, and in case you can't see it, Satya Nadella, excuse me, would help if I said his name correctly, who's the Microsoft CEO, talking there about digital transformation and four tenets of Microsoft's view on DT. So engaging customers, empowering employees, optimizing operations, and transforming products. And that kind of struck us because that's very strongly aligned to the way that Visual's gone to market for the last few years, how we help our customers to achieve digital transformation. And it's really at the heart of what we do. So we have three key offers around engaging, empowering, and enhancing to transform, engage, and accelerate people's businesses, whether that's around a flexible work style or whether it's around cloud productivity, cloud analytics. So, this is not new stuff, but it is very much it's come to fore recently. So what does Visual look like as a business? Well, we're around about 180 odd people at the moment, based in Stafford, and our business is split, as you can see on the slide I'm showing now, into consulting, services and skills. So on the consulting side, we have a business group with strategic consulting, engagement management, and also an architecture team. And we've got a number of technical practices split into two groups, cloud productivity and cloud platform. From a services perspective, obviously Amanda and Helen introduced themselves. That's from our Visual Managed Services group, which provides fully managed solutions on either a reactive or a proactive basis, and it really doesn't matter whether that's on premises or cloud or whether it's hosted. So the whole point there is about monitoring and optimization. And then skills is quite interesting, and I think something quite unique to Visual, in that we have partnerships with a number of academies, with a number of colleges to provide Microsoft Visual Academies. So I think there's around 9 or 10 now across the country, and the aim is to grow that out so that eventually there would be one in every local enterprise partnership, every LEP. But the thinking here came from our own difficulties in attracting the right talent into our business. People go back and forth between consultancies, and there's a fair amount of trading in what's actually a pretty incestuous industry, and it really doesn't help us when we take somebody from a competitor, or a competitor takes somebody from us, and we went, well, how do we plug the gap, the digital skills shortage? And actually did something quite proactive, partnered with a local college, started an apprenticeship scheme. We take on 20 apprentices every year into the visual business. We have grown that out, and obviously with the changes that have happened this year, with the apprenticeship levy coming on for all companies with a substantial payroll, that's something that we can work with customers and other companies to try and place people in apprentices within their organisation. So if that's something of interest, then I'm sure one of our people can talk to you about that. Then underneath all of this is solutions. So we have some software products, we have some sector-specific propositions, and so whether that's some add-ons for Office 365, we have our Minerva 365 suite, which has room booking and other capabilities, but we've also got specifics aligned to the justice sector or the retail sector as well, so our Nimos offers. So again, I won't go into huge detail about those on this call, but there are other webcasts where we talk about those, or we'd be happy to put you in touch with people. What I didn't say when I was talking about the technical area is that we've actually split out into a number of technology-aligned practices. This slide's slightly out of date because we've now moved application development into Visual Managed Services. The idea being that development operations really are close together. We really do true DevOps there. The idea is that visual consultants are specialists in their areas, so you won't get a SharePoint consultant turning up to talk to you about SQL, for instance. We've got complete breadth across the whole Microsoft stack, and we service that with subject matter experts. So I do have some more slides which sort of build out a bit more about the visual business, but I think we should probably move on and start to talk about Azure Optimisation. So the first thing I'd like to talk about this morning is the Visual Cloud Application Analysis Framework. So kind of a working title really. Cloud Application Analysis is the service that we offer around this, but it's an approach that we take. It's a 5-stage methodology that we take to application transformation. Now, don't worry, you won't be able to see all the detail of this slide at this point. I will go through each of the 5 stages, so each of those coloured blocks, and we'll go through in detail over the next few minutes. But essentially, we can use this for application transformation, whether that's take an estate and cycle through the whole estate, so to work with existing requirements, or whether it's net new requirements, the new application requirements that come along from the business as we're engaged. As a Microsoft consultancy, obviously this is built around Azure, but there is absolutely no reason why any of what we're talking about here, it is a business consulting engagement, and there is no reason why it wouldn't work with other public cloud providers as well. Just that we wouldn't be in a position to advise on how to make best use of those platforms. But the idea is about organisations being able to provide a fast response to requirements, and potentially even automated response if there's some pre-approval built-in model. So if I move on and talk about the first phase here, so we've got prepare, evaluate, engage, transform, and operate. So the prepare phase is really an initial setup phase. And it's about establishing the capability that's needed there to run the whole of the rest of the program. Now, the first thing I should point out in this version of the slides, I've put dotted lines around some of the items, and that's the thing I'm usually asked for. Why are those dotted? And it's because we've scaled this for different sizes of organisation. So we're currently running through with a very large organisation with a large application estate. They've got the full piece, but equally we've done a scaled down engagement with a much smaller organisation where it was more of a one-off exercise and where we didn't leave things in place. And so the prepare stage was you know, a little more cut down. Okay, so I'm hearing that I can't see the slides due to network issues. That's a bit of a problem. So let's just see. Try again. Okay. I can. Okay, so thank you for that, Andrew. Okay, guys in visual who can say I can see them, thank you very much, but that's probably not that, you know, you're obviously not coming in remotely. So, okay, so I can see Kelly is on here and she's offered to email the slides across to one of the guys, and I can see others saying that they can see them. So let's just carry on. But any more problems, please let me know. Okay, so just jumping back to presentation a moment. So we were talking about prepare. Whole point here is that most organisations have got a whole suite of applications and they've got various amounts of knowledge about those applications. Probably fairly light level of knowledge in many cases. Sometimes they've been procured by the business, sometimes there are business owners for them, sometimes the applications aren't owned. So the idea is that we work with customers to establish a set of architectural principles. We do some work around discovering what their application catalogue looks like. And then if it's going to be required for subsequent stages, you know, there might be a need to set some additional support capability up. There might be a need to look at the DevOps capability, although I firmly believe DevOps is a cultural thing. It's not about tools. You know, there's a process and a mindset that's needed. So it's not just a case of just setting a load of tools in place. And there's also this concept of the business transformation office, which I'll talk about if one of the later slides. But if we think of the prepare phase as getting these things in place and getting the applications and pushing them through a funnel, we get to a point where we're ready to move on to evaluate. So evaluation is all about working through each application in a repeatable manner to perform an assessment so that we know where that application should end up if it's transformed into a cloud environment. So we end up looking at things for, you know, whether an application is actually in scope for transformation, is it supported, is it supportable? We look at the technical requirements, you know, could it actually run in a public cloud environment? We look at what would be involved in migrating that, and we look at, you know, the operational and management requirements. And ultimately we come up with one of 6 R's. There's only 5 shown on the slide, so for those who are wondering what the 6th one is, it's remain. There's also do nothing option. So, you know, sometimes it's best to leave things in place exactly where they are. You know, just to mention really what those 5, the remaining 5 R's are. So remain is number 6, but number 1 is retire. So sometimes applications are no longer required. Number 2 is rehost. So typically that's a move to infrastructure as a service. It might be lift and shift type of thing. Refactor. Sometimes we end up decoupling applications and looking to see where we can use platform as a service and how it might be architected slightly differently. Replace. Sometimes applications get replaced with an equivalent SaaS application. So, for instance, Exchange or SharePoint might get replaced with their online equivalents from Office 365. And then the last one, re-envision, is where there are applications that really get, you know, completely redeveloped into a cloud-aware solution. So perhaps a legacy application providing good value, but it can't be migrated in its current form. So it needs to be completely rethought and maybe redesigned, using modern techniques, using containerization, using Microsoft services, and using the best various cloud elements to bring them together. Other outputs from this phase, we look at approximate cost to transform. It's very much, I often describe it as more of an art than a science, but at least let's just come up with some loose groupings around these that help us to estimate cost. And we already mentioned, we talk about what platform to move on to. So that's the evaluate phase, and the reason I've gone into more detail about that is we'll talk about the service in a minute, which is, this is at the hub of it. So once we've worked out what needs to happen with each application, and of course you can do this on a batch basis, take a group at a time, need to engage and engage with the business, and typically that means IT engaging with business application owners. So this is where the concept of the business transformation often comes in, and whether this is a function as shown on the diagram, or whether it's a load of activities that need to take place, it really doesn't matter. Some activities you would just take for granted. Yes, you're going to provide some training. Yes, you're going to think about change and release management. Yes, you're going to think about security and compliance. But there are others there which perhaps wouldn't be considered. And what I didn't mention that sort of passes in from evaluation, the concept of a digital application passport. So it's a set of information about each application that gets passed through each stage of the life cycle. Ultimately, what we get from engaging with business application owners and properly preparing like this is we get to a position where we're ready to transform. And that transformation, again, digital application passport comes through. Transformation might be on a DevOps-driven approach, or very often it's project-driven. So, mini projects for each application. And it's not just about transforming the applications here. There's also about transforming how service is provided. So, that's a key consideration here. As we move on through to the operate phase. Now, operation in the cloud, as you'll hear in the second half of this presentation, is not the same as operational premises. There are different considerations. It's a different focus. So concerns aren't around infrastructure. It's around monitoring service costs. It's around health and performance. And changes to the environment often bring opportunities to improve the security posture and also advice for better use of cloud service. So you'll see, here that operate is a much more collaborative approach with various providers involved, as well as operational teams, developers, and the application owners. And that's just reflecting the modern environment. So that's our 5 stages in our approach, and the cloud application analysis is a service which provides a rapid assessment. So we take you to the point where you're ready to engage with business application owners to actually start the transformation. The engage, transform, operate is a journey, and it perhaps doesn't end because new requirements come in all the time. But we would, at least out of rapid assessment, provide you an estimate of what would be involved. And I'm going to hand over to Abby now, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the that.
Okay, so the idea behind the cloud's application analysis was really to get a view of the whole of your application estate and probably find applications that you didn't think were on your estate still or you didn't know about. So the idea was to get a full view of all your applications so we can really analyse and have the full picture. The analysis covers the business requirements for the application, so this is obviously what the actual application does, the costings around it, the support agreements, any contractual date, but we also look at the server side of it, so any dependencies, what versions are they on, so we really get a full picture of an application and also what the organisation was planning to do with the application, because Obviously, it'll be in its own life cycle within an organisation, whether it's the fact that they want to keep it, they want to exploit it, or they want to look to get rid of it probably in 18 to 24 months. So all of these things are taken into consideration before we do the architectural analysis to work out what's best to do with that application. Because obviously, if someone's looking to get rid of something in 18 months, you've got to consider whether it's worth the cost to move it to cloud, or whether you just say, we'll cut it off at 18 months and we'll look at what else we can do in the cloud. So this all runs off a SharePoint list, which is the application catalogue, which is with the customer. The customer can take this forward and use it as a single version of the truth throughout their transformation into the cloud, so that they can always keep updating it, adding columns and making use out of it. So it's like an asset register, really. The application passports are the digital passports run in Power Apps, and also you get a dashboard, which is shown on the screen now, running through Power BI to allow the customer to interrogate the data and really be able to get quick answers from the data. So the number of applications to retire, the cost of those applications. We'll just show the Power App.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the application passports, and this is really more of a digital way of viewing the information rather than a Word document, which was the old way of doing it. It allows it to be mobile friendly, so support engineers or IT teams can use it and view it as and when they need to, and also they have the ability to edit the information as well, because it's all in Office 365. But really, it's to give the customers a full view of what they've got, give them an idea of where they're going, and allow them to move forward into the cloud. Because the whole issue we were getting was people says, I want to move, but I don't know what to move and when to move. So this analysis really does feed in to the architectural design and the roadmap and the migration strategy for each of those applications.
Okay. So thanks for that, Abby.
Okay.
So that's given some indication of what our cloud application analysis is like. And so just to give some idea of how we make that happen, we would have a business analyst engaged, we'd have an architect engaged, we'd work with the customer on the initial application catalogue. And there are a number of deliverables that come out of this, the dashboard, the digital application passport, and ultimately a target architecture and migration strategy. So that's the first part of the presentation. Move on to Azure Optimisation now, and I'm just going to hand over to Amanda and to Helen, and we'll run from there.
Lovely. So,
well, the slides are actually moving themselves forward, so I might have to be careful with this.
Hoping everyone can see our slides now.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we ourselves made the journey into the cloud, and along with a number of other customers, moved into the cloud. And one of our reasons for doing that, and one of our customers' reasons for doing that, was to save money. Amongst other things, amongst other benefits, it was primarily to look at saving money. So we moved into the cloud, and we got our first couple of months' bills, and they were not really what we were expecting, if we're absolutely honest. They were quite a lot more than we'd anticipated. We knew that our Azure costs would go up, but we hadn't really anticipated by how much. It's very difficult to predict what the costs might be. So we needed to have a look at what we could do to reduce our ongoing monthly costs. And one of the things that we had a look at was where are we spending that money? So we had a look at what was available on the portal, and this chart here might be something that's familiar to you. This is available on the Microsoft portal. And it tells you, it's a good overview of how much your monthly costs are going to be, or how much they have been rather. But it didn't give us any kind of breakdown into any kind of detail. So it didn't help us look at where we could target any kind of optimization or any kind of improvements in order to save money. So we had a look around to see if there was anything else available to us, and there are some Power BI reports, which is brilliant, because they're interactive and we can look at them, but unfortunately, again, they didn't give us the granular detail that we needed to be able to focus any improvements that we wanted to do. So we had a look at creating some of our own, really. So we had a look at creating some of our own so that we could concentrate on where the spend was and what areas we were spending money in, and we'll show you some of those reports in a short while. Some of the other things that we did around trying to reduce the cost were, if I hand over to Helen.
Okay, so we tried some really basic things, to be honest with you, to begin with, and we did make some small improvement. So we did things around in Azure Resource Manager. You can use the RBAC roles, which really did help in terms of one of the biggest things we saw was when we first took it on. We didn't really understand, and a lot of customers do tell us this happens as well. So we just sort of gave everybody co-administrator access, and unfortunately, what that meant was people would go on, see all these fantastically powerful machines or services, and think, oh yes, I want that, without really thinking about the cost impact. And we certainly had an experience of that when we had a bit of an unexpected bill of £1,000 over 10 days on a SQL data warehouse, and that sort of triggered us to think, well, there must be a better way of doing that. One of the other things we did, and we help customers to do, is to utilise the dev test labs where possible. So these are great things. They are enclosed environments that we can lock down, and we use it primarily really in RMS for our apprentices. So they're a great little place that they can spin up machines, not really have to worry because we can limit what they can do in terms of cost impact. And they get to have a play with things and learn things in that way. But they're great for developers as well. We know a number of customers have utilised them in a development environment. And again, it's all about controlling that access and controlling that spend. One of the other big things we did, which again we can help customers with and we can provide advice, is optimise our backup solutions. So again, we went to the cloud fairly quickly internally. And a couple of our customers have done this, and the idea being we just want to back up everything so that we know that we've got it. We went a little bit overboard, so we scaled that back a little bit. We really looked at the great new features that are coming out in Azure around the file folder backup, which I think is fantastic, and things that are coming out in preview, which really help save money around that. So rather than backing up an entire VM, we realised actually we just need to back up the databases on that VM, so or the files and folders on that VM. So we utilised Azure Backup for that, and again we can help sort of work that out for a customer as well. So once we'd realised that we had expensive resources, or someone had put up a really pricey VM, we use our own performance data to analyse that, to really understand whether it needs to be quite as highly spec'd as it possibly was. So we use internal things like OMS and SCOM. We have our own SCOM, which we have for customers. And we look at the performance data on that and recommendations on resizing virtual machines or resizing applications that may have been deployed. And again, I think I mentioned it earlier, one of the biggest things about Azure, and to tie into what Mark said earlier, the cloud is a completely different sort of scenario to the normal old data center days, which I am from. It used to be build a server and you wouldn't touch it unless it broke, because you'd leave it in your data center and it wouldn't really be thought about. Whereas with Azure and certainly cloud providers, there's new things coming out all the time, and it's being on top of those to work out how sort of scalable your services, and also B, if it can maximise any cost savings by moving to a newer product. So Azure do loads of offers when they're trialling new hardware. They do evaluation offers, and what it tends to be, if you get in early, you get it cheaper than the current price you're paying, but you get new hardware, so it's great. But it's being able to understand when those offers come out and how that service could be moved into that new offer quickly, easily, without impact to your users. So all this is based as well on understanding, as Amanda said earlier, the granularity of those bills and understanding where you're spending that money, and that's what you're all interested in, what you want to see. So this is what we did. We have like a two sort of factor offering here. So we have a reactive and a proactive offering. So this is the reactive offering. So what this is, for customers that are already managed service, you'll be familiar with our daily operations. And what those are emailed reports that come out every single day, and they give you a really quick overview of your environment. This is a very similar vein. It's the last 7 days of your spending, and we do the red and the green, which gives you an idea of red if it's gone up by 10% from the previous day. It goes green if you've gone down by 10% from the previous day. It's really quick, really easy for you to see. As you can see, exactly what resources are costing you money. Amanda loves this, so we get these every day for our own internal purposes, and I usually know if there's a bit of red on one of the reports, I'll get an IM or an email, what's going on with this. So and then we can quickly explain away, oh, well, we decided to do this because ultimately it wasn't performing, or, oh, it was completely out of spec and we've changed it down to this. So the more proactive side of things, so what we wanted to then, so that's great, but you can only see 7 days worth of data, and we can't really say if we've saved any money when we've made a change. So this is where we bring in the Power BI reports, which give you that granularity of the data. Bear with me 2 seconds. There we go. This is our Power BI report pack, the standard offering that we've got for customers. And I'll go through each report, but the one thing I would say is this is the standard one that we've developed around our requirements and customer requirements that we've been working with. We fully understand that they might not work for every customer, so we're happy to work with customers to customise these if there's something in particular you wanted. Now I'll give an example of that later as well. So we start off with just the overview slide. This is quite similar to the Microsoft one, quite high level. But the one thing I would probably point out is this pie chart in the middle, which shows the resource group. So this is something that Microsoft do to group together like resources. Sounds obvious, right? However, some of them aren't quite. Some of the names are really obvious. So you've got things like virtual machines. They're all your VMs. You've got things like databases. They're all your SQL databases or MySQL databases, etc. Some aren't quite so obvious. So I looked at this when I did ours, and server farms popped up. And I had absolutely no idea what server farms was. So it wasn't until I actually interrogated that data and looked at the granularity, see they are actually our dynamically expanding websites that we had. Quite so obvious. But without actually interrogating that, we wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have had an idea what that cost was causing us. £235 in 3 months, that cost us, for example. So as you can see, hopefully, or for those when you watch it back, it's a Power BI report that is reactive to what you click on, so you can absolutely click on things and it will change what it's highlighting for you. You can see we have it done with by subscription, so we're quite lucky in so much that we have subscriptions for each department. Some customers we've spoken to aren't quite so lucky in that sense. They have one subscription, and then so what we did was we spoke to them and we've come up with another solution for them, which I'll show you a little bit later. But this kind of gives you an overview, a bit like the Microsoft idea. So what most customers like and what they're interested in are the following reports. So we've got a drilling report. So this literally does drill into that day-by-day data by resource which people want. So I'll pick a particular resource here as an example, our SQL Server that we did. So you can see the report updates, and I can see how much it cost me in the date slide of the period that I've selected. You've also got a day-by-day table that shows you how much it costs each day, and the little graph at the bottom where we can see, yep, that cost £11.41 on the 4th of the 2nd. So you can also see the graph changes, and we made a change. We realised we were overspec'd for that server, and we took it down to £6.65 a day. Another really cool thing that Power BI does, all built in, is we have an average line on there, so you can see on average how much you're spending on that particular resource, and the forecasting, which customers really like. So it will give you an idea based on your previous data of where that might go, an upper and a lower bound in the future. Okay. So one of the things customers said to us was, great, we've made a change, but how do we know it's worked, or how do we track whether that's someone else has made a change to it, or how do we show that to management? So we did the change monitoring report, which shows here. So you can see exactly the same resources we picked on the previous report. That started off live as an F8, which was the £11.41 a day. We took that down to a D3, V2, and that levelled out at around £6.65 a day. You can clearly see on the report all the different machines we tried. The little red dot, I always have to explain because some people ask. We did try out a D11 V2 for all of an hour and realised that it really didn't work for us. So again, though, it's a really good idea that it's really good to be able to show that to management, to show we were trying to make cost savings, but we just couldn't, in that instance, take it any further than we did. The next one that we did, this is quite a new one. So we, like for all of our customers, provide, and we do internally, a service review, monthly service review. As part of that, we have a section where we talk about the Azure spend on all the different subscriptions. And to do that, I needed to be able to say whether we made a saving from the previous month or whether we actually went over what we spent the previous month. And I wanted to be able to understand and show management where that actually went, on what particular resource that went. So we created the comparison report. You can do it via a resource, or like I say, you can do it via a resource container, you can do it via a subscription. So this one shows it by subscription, and you can see that that's where we made the saving on the SQL box from £215 a month down to £88 in March. There. And the little table at the bottom again gives you that granularity of data. Nearly at the end now. So this one is quite an overview one, but I found management quite like pictures. So this is Amanda's favourite report. Again, going back to giving out lots of access and people going a little bit wild around the VMs they were creating. We put this together very easily to give an overview of exactly what VMs, and what we can do this for anything, not just VMs, but in our particular case it was VMs, were in the environment. So you can quickly pick out something that you know might be costing quite a lot of money. So I'm going to pick on the standard A4, and it pops it down and it tells me exactly what resource that is and exactly what subscription that's in. Again, can be tailored to do anything at all. It doesn't have to show you the resource or the subscription, but we can do that. And we found that particularly useful. Last but not least, this one, as I mentioned before, one of our customers came to us and said, this is all great, but you're showing it by subscription. So we only have one subscription, but we still want to do a Costback chargeback. How do we do that? We went away and thought about it, and we decided the best way to show this for them would be to utilise the tags function in Azure. So you can put any tag on anything at all in Azure, and you make it up to whatever you wish. Product completely dynamic, so it will pick up any tag that you apply and pop it into the related database that this Power BI feeds from. Power BI itself, the report isn't quite as dynamic, but we are working on that. However, because all the data is there, it's a really easy change if you decide that you wanted to call your tag DEP, DEPT instead of department. So what we did, we tagged a few, so you can literally click on your department, it'll show you the owner, which is what you associate in Azure, and it will give you a breakdown on the left-hand side there of the costs associated with those machines or those resources that you've applied. That's pretty much it. The only other thing I would say is, as I've said before, we are quite flexible in so much as if the data's there, we're quite happy to work with customers on providing reports, and then if we think they're useful for other customers, we will then offer those out in the standard reporting pack as well. So everybody wins, essentially. And that's it, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Helen. If you can go back to the slides a moment. I think really we've just reached a point anyway where we were just going to wrap up at this point. So I just wanted to thank everybody for the time and for joining this call. So you've heard this morning around some of the work we can do from a business analysis perspective to try and help organisations understand the size and scale of their application estate, and to try and get a view on how they might move to the cloud and what form that might take. Because one of the points I didn't make this morning is that lifting and shifting to the cloud is unlikely to deliver the sort of cost savings that you might like. Just picking something up and running it from somebody else's data center is a lot of work for very limited return. However, if you can be smart about it and you can right size as you go through your transformation, not just right size but re-architect where necessary, then there can be quite significant savings. And then obviously Helen and Amanda have talked around what we do inside Visual to optimize our Azure spend, and you know, some of the numbers you saw there, you're probably going, well, that's not a big number. We're not a massive company, you know, we're a mid-sized organisation. But if you scale that up to a large enterprise, those numbers can get pretty big, and therefore some of the things that Helen talked about here that we've done, they certainly scale as well and can really make a difference on your operating cost. So with that, I think that draws the presentation part to a close. I know I've seen one or two questions come in on the Q&A panel. I don't know if we can open the lines up for people if they want to actually ask questions. And whilst we're doing that, we've got a question in here from Carl Clark, and Carl was just asking about the tagging. So just to confirm that tagging is only on Azure Resource Manager. With Service Manager or Classic Mode as it used to be, that we need to have multiple subscription. Really, that's one of the advantages of using ARM, and one of the reasons model, the Resource Manager model was introduced. Marius, I can see a question here about how licensing works for the visual offering. I'm assuming you're talking there about the reports that Helen's just been presenting.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in that, but it's been quite a challenge for us. The getting into Azure and starting to consume it is easy. Keeping track of what you're doing is the difficult bit, which is why I was really interested in that last section on the various reporting of the usage and costs associated with that.
Okay, cool. So, Marius, I have just applied in the IM window, but I'll confirm it as well by just saying that everything is provided by Visual. So all the hosting of the data and the actual Power BI reports are compiled and hosted on Visual infrastructure. And then the actual reports, the Power BI, are shared with yourselves. So the main thing that really is required is just the Power BI Pro license from Microsoft for your accounts. and that's just because of some of the data inside of the actual reports just requires that feature. The email, daily ops, again, they're just emailed out from the visual infrastructure. So again, there's no licensing cost to yourselves around that either.
Okay, thanks. I think I'll take this offline and get in touch with you guys separately.
Super, that sounds good.
Right, excuse the beep in the background there. So does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask, either on the IM or want to speak? I think people are unmuted now.
Mark, it's Vic Focus from Staffordshire County Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can, thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Just in terms of a question, in terms of your applications analysis piece, is there a base level of data that you would recommend that was in place prior to commencing that exercise?
Yes, so all we'd ask for is the application name and your point of contact for me to go and analyse the data with. That's the starting point, and obviously as I move around I find other applications because people say have you thought about this one, and also other contacts, whether it be business or technical side.
Okay.
The other thing to say is that we're continually developing the service as well, trying to find better ways of doing it. So there's some new tooling that we're looking at the moment that will help us to understand the dependencies. But the real value on this one is the business analysis piece that Abby brings.
Right, so you actually conduct the interaction with the sort of business stakeholders, the business owners, and apologies, I didn't see the slide deck, so I sort of was listening but didn't necessarily see all of the content.
That's not a problem, but we can get you the recording and get you a copy of the deck, and we're happy to have a chat with you offline as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the idea with doing the analysis more in a manual way is to get an idea of how the organisation uses the application, the real criticality around the application, and also getting the idea around the costs and the contractual side of the applications rather than just the technical side where you get servers, the dependencies. They're all useful and obviously will help make the decision, but we also need to see the business side of an application as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, well, if we've not got any more questions, I think we'll probably call this to a halt and give you all 10 minutes back in your day. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning. I've seen some people that I recognise names on there, so I won't call you out and embarrass anybody, but it's always good to see people that we know, but also great to be talking with customers, potential customers who perhaps know us less well. So if anybody wants to follow up from this, then you have the details for contacting Visual. If you don't, then you can always email me, markw@visual.com. But there are formal channels too. So our website's at www.visual.com, and we look forward to hearing from you too. Thanks very much.